everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to either watch live right now, or if you are watching this later in a recording, hello to you as well. My name is Kate Trigger Duffert, and I am the Director of General Assembly Planning in the Office of the General Assembly for the Presbyterian Church USA. And we are taking this time here today so that we can answer any questions that you might have about this General Assembly, about how the General Assembly will operate or what to expect. For those of you who are new to the General Assembly, it is a gathering that happens every 2 years. And in that gathering, we have the meeting of the highest council of the Presbyterian Church. So we have our sessions, we have presbyteries and synods, and then we have the General Assembly, which is our national body that makes decisions for the future of the church. And during that assembly, there are lots of wonderful things that happen. Lots of important statements are made, decisions about actions the church and congregations will take, and also opportunities for us to worship with one another and to really become a full body of the whole of the church as one group. So this time is going to be a time when you can ask questions again. We have a couple of different spots. I know we're working on getting our Facebook set up. So if you happen to be on YouTube in another setting, you can ask something there. But we also want to let folks know that any question goes here, as long as it's well intended. And we will answer whatever we can. So I invite you to share whatever you're thinking of for this assembly, to let us know what you would want to know about. And I will pause for a moment and just check in with tech folks to make sure that we are heading into the right place. And if I need to repeat all of that again, I absolutely can. So give me just a moment while I read and see what's going on. All right. So we're going to hold and see if we can get the Facebook feed established. If you're on YouTube for some reason you're able to see this, we'll come back in a moment. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening for those of you who are joining us from wherever you are at. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here and have some conversation about the upcoming General Assembly. My name is Kate Trigger Duffert, and I am the Director for General Assembly Planning in the Office of the General Assembly. And I am looking forward to spending some time with all of you today to talk about this upcoming General Assembly, which is yet another new format. For those who have been around at previous assemblies, it will feel a little new. And for those who are new to the work of the General Assembly, will be a wonderful opportunity to get to see the church at work in a unique way. So I'm excited to be here with you today. I do want to share briefly just a little bit about myself and a little bit about the assembly, and then we will open it up and you can submit your comments and we will get those questions in and we can begin to answer and engage as much as we can. So as I said, my name is Kate. I am pleased to serve with a number of wonderful people on the national staff for the Presbyterian Church USA. And I also am a ruling elder at Beechmont Presbyterian Church and am a deep lover of the work of this church. So I am excited to see how this assembly plays out in this new context and to continue to develop how the Presbyterian Church can answer God's call for our work in the world. And that really is the center of the work of the General Assembly. It is a place where people from across the denomination can come together and can look to see what we may need to be doing as a church, can discern in community how God is calling us to live out our faith. And the assembly meets every 2 years to do this work. It is a council of the church, just like a session or a presbytery. And that gathering is made up of ruling elders and teaching elders from across the church who come together and have conversation in committees and in plenary sessions to discuss how the church can enact. So we have virtual committee meetings this year, so that's a new format for us. The committees will be meeting from June 25th through the 27th online via Zoom. So all commissioners and advisory delegates, the committee leadership team, anyone who is joining to speak to them as a resource person or overture advocate, all of those folks will be on Zoom for those committee meetings. We then move into plenary sessions, which will be in person in Salt Lake City, Utah. And those will start on June 29th and go through July 4th. We don't know what time it will end on July 4th. That depends a little bit on when we wrap up with the work of the assembly. But we will be in the Salt Palace Convention Center for that. You can see in the photo that big entrance, the column is called the Salt Shaker entrance. And we will be just past that entrance to gather for the in-person plenary sessions. And it will be the first time that we have been able to join together as an entire body of assembly participants since 2018 in person. So it'll be a really wonderful, wonderful time for all of us to gather there. This assembly is unique. It's a format we have not done before, but in some ways, every assembly is unique because the different topics that come to the assembly come from congregations, come from sessions and folks out in the world who say, this matters to me, and bring an idea forward to their presbytery, and their presbytery or their synod develops that idea and moves it into the work of the assembly. And it joins there with reports that come from committees and agencies that were established by past assemblies. And all of these different items come together for us to discern as an entire body of where the church will be going in those committee and plenary sessions. So I invite you to send in questions. Do not be scared to be the first. You are welcome to hop in, whatever question it may be. It's probably something that someone else has been wondering about as well. But we want to take this time to connect directly with folks from those of us who are working on the assembly. And you can see I'm in Louisville, so there's a lot happening behind me that you may see folks strolling by or trucks driving by. But we wanted to connect directly with those of you who are online and to be able to communicate about what is happening at this assembly. So I invite you to add those in to the comments on Facebook or YouTube. Simply type in what your question is, and we can get those into our feed, and I can answer those as soon as they are submitted. While you're waiting to be brave enough to be the first person, I will take the opportunity to answer some questions that I've heard that have come in across time from folks about how this assembly will function. So one question that I've heard is, where do I find information about the assembly? Where do I where do I get all of the business? Where do I know what events are happening? And the easy answer for that is to go to the General Assembly website. And that website has everything you could possibly need to know about the assembly as an observer, as someone who wants that large scope of what's happening with the assembly. And that website is ga-pcusa.org. And on that website, you would find not only the schedule and the docket, some FAQs. Once the assembly begins, that's actually where all of the live streams will be from our committees that will be happening, and then from plenary. There's also access to register if you'd like to register as an observer, or for those who have received registration invitations for other roles, you can click through there. There's a page on the code of conduct that we expect that we all live by, and a page on equity and inclusion that goes into the many different ways that the assembly seeks to provide access and care for the many different folks who come to the assembly. So I do encourage everyone, especially, to go to that page on equity and inclusion and see what's happening at this assembly, from information about hotels and accessibility and scent sensitivities in the plenary hall, to conversation about some spaces that we provide for folks. There's a BIPOC and an LGBTQIA plus space and what those really look like. There's information on that part of the website. There's also a section in the observer info that's GA226 for observers. And if you have anything that you don't really know about how this assembly works, about how polity works, any of those things, that site is a really wonderful place where my colleagues have compiled a list of resources that are mostly podcasts and videos and really engaging ways to learn more about how the assembly functions and how that all works together. So again, I encourage you to go to the website. If you are there and you want to see the business, you can click through to My GA if you have registered, or to PC Biz, and you can see all of the business that's coming before this assembly. So that website is probably the place to go if you have questions. I also see that there's a question where someone's wondering if there will be an app for GA. There's not going to be an app this year. I know that in past years, when we had a more comprehensive in-person presence from committee all the way through plenary, there were so many events that an app was really necessary to have something immediate where you could track everything that's happening. Because of the schedule for this year, which was decided by the last General Assembly, we have those online committees for 3 days, but then the in-person time is really heavily booked. So you can see the docket up here on your page, and you'll see it's lengthy for each of those days. So really, every day that folks are in person for Saturday through Thursday, those are really occupied with worship and with plenary, and then some functions that are occurring around meals. And we do encourage people to focus on that work. That's ultimately the calling of the assembly, is to do that business of the church and be that council that worships and discerns together. So we do not have a lot of things that are planned around the same time as those plenaries, because that's what we need to be doing, is the work of the assembly. So there's not really a need to track in quite the same way that maybe we have for past assemblies. There will not be an app for this assembly. It does not mean apps are forever off the table. That's kind of a theme for this assembly that you may hear, is that we are living into a new way of doing this particular assembly. There are still ways to amend and rethink how we do the next assembly, which is recommended to take place in Milwaukee in 2026. And then from there, there's even more space for the Committee on the Office of the General Assembly and the new governing body that may emerge from the unification of the Office of the General Assembly and the Presbyterian Mission Agency, which, if you want more info about that, I recommend going to the PCUSA website and looking for Unification Commission info. But That body will ultimately determine what sorts of formats we live into for future assemblies. So there's lots of space to continue developing and evaluating and reevaluating and redeveloping what the assembly may look like. It looks like there's also a question about kid-friendly activities and how we include children in the assembly. And I will just say that I was a GA kid. I'm someone whose parents dragged her, willingly though, to General Assemblies as vacation every summer. So that's how I grew up, was loving the assembly. So I also brought my 3-month-old to the assembly in 2018. So again, love this as a place for us to include the fullness of God's body. So we have a couple of options for folks. We first of all have a wonderful dependent care policy for our commissioners, advisory delegates, and staff and volunteers who are working for the assembly, who are working at the assembly. And that care policy makes sure that folks who have people that they take care of, either children, other relatives, parents, individuals with disabilities, whoever that may be, that those caretakers are able to offset the costs that are incurred from participating in the assembly. And that may be flying out a child to be with you at the assembly. It may be bringing your kid with you and also having someone else join so that the two of them can be with one another, but also near you at the assembly. So that's one thing that we have a little bit set in place for folks to help make the assembly more open to folks with children and others who are taken care of by our participants. There is a family room that will be on site for the in-person plenaries. And that family room is not staffed, so it's not childcare, but it will have some fun things for kids to do. It will have a stream of the plenary hall so that you can see what's happening during plenary without having to leave that family room, some toys, coloring, things like that. So it's a place where kids can just be kids and you don't have to miss out on what's happening in the assembly hall. Aside from that, I know that there has been some really wonderful conversation in the Facebook group for this General Assembly. So I encourage folks who are interested in the Assembly to join that Facebook group, that 226th Assembly group, and have conversation about what age children you may be bringing and how we may be able to connect with one another and make some plans. So the Assembly is absolutely open to children, and hopefully they'll find some of the things that are happening there to be just as moving to them as it can be for others who are there. So a question about Salt Lake City. So I'm just briefly to let you know about some things to expect. Salt Lake City is very walkable. All of the hotels that folks will be in are very, very close. So within a block and a half of the convention center where we will be staying are each of the hotels for our participants. Observers may choose to find a hotel farther out, but there are also hotels that observers can stay in that are right next to the convention center. So no one should have to go too far. The sidewalks are very broad. It's easy to get around. So it's been a really wonderful place for folks to visit as we've been preparing for the assembly. The presbytery is phenomenal and so excited about people coming and getting to experience what it's like to be Presbyterian in Utah. And so I'm really excited for all of us to go there as a Presbyterian community and to see the work that Presbyterians in Utah are already doing and to join with them and support them and take that back out into our communities. And one of the ways that we're doing that is through worship on Sunday morning. So the first Sunday of the General Assembly in person, worship will not be a large group worship, but rather the Presbytery of Utah has worked to set up a travel arrangement so that folks can travel to Presbyterian churches across the Presbytery of Utah. And there's information on each of those congregations and what time those worship services are on the GA website in the schedule of events. And you can go there and you can see the different services. And then if you register, you can indicate which service you would like to go to and get the information on how to travel to those congregations. So it's a really wonderful opportunity to see the different kinds of things that are happening in that space. I could talk about Utah a lot because it's been really wonderful, but I see there's some other questions, so maybe I'll come back later. But there's a question about how observers sign up for open hearing testimony and what the deadlines are for that. That's a great question and very timely. So we just had our 45-day deadline last Saturday, and that means that all of the business that has come in for the assembly is now in. We have all of the overtures, we have all of the reports, and we know what it is that people may want to give some sort of public hearing, open hearing testimony to. So colleagues have been working together. We have a GA planning team, and we have been working to get that list of information ready so that folks can indicate which item of business they would like to speak to and say whether they are a pro or con and give us their contact information. So that will be going up on this GA website soon. Again, I keep throwing people to the website, but that's because it is there for all of those public-facing resources that you may need. So I encourage you, if you are looking for information on open hearings, that will come out soon. You have quite a bit of time until the assembly really comes into play to register for those, because the open hearings will be live during committee. So that's one thing I would recommend, that if you are planning on signing up to give a testimony during open hearing, that you block off the days when those committees are happening to the best of your ability. I know that's a big ask to block off whole days, but block those off so that you know that you can hopefully be available for if you are picked and contacted by the committee leadership to join those Zoom meetings live. So if you did an open hearing at the last assembly, you know those were online and were pre-recorded. So there was a bit of an earlier deadline because we had to do a lot of work to pre-record and get those out. That is not the case for this assembly. So we are really working towards live participation during the committees, June 25th through the 27th online. I also see a question from Stephen about the best resource for the most commonly used parliamentary procedures for a quick reference. That's a great question. So one of the things that we are working on for advisory delegates and commissioners, as well as committee leadership, is to send out an actual physical mailing. I know that's surprising because we're so much in the world of online, but an actual physical mailing that will have a couple of resources that we think are things you need tangibly in front of you. So those include Equity Prime information, which more of that is in the mandatory training that folks should be taking. It also includes information on parliamentary procedure, including a list of motions and kind of the appropriate timing of motions and what takes precedence in that particular moment. So it's a really great resource on parliamentary procedure. There's also some information if you go to either MyGA or PCBiz and you look at the resources section, there's some links to information that you can walk through. If you scroll through, you'll find some information on parliamentary items. But again, that training that is if you go and register in MyGA and you move forward through your training process, there are a lot of fantastic resources that will prepare you for parliamentary procedure, that will prepare you for how to get online and be a part of those committees. It's a lot of things that we have tried to gather information for as concisely as possible so that you feel prepared. And just as a reminder, if you haven't been in an assembly committee before, every committee has a parliamentary manager who is there to help keep us all together and to keep the committee moving forward. So there are wonderful parliamentary managers who will be there to help as well. All right, it looks like we have a question from Bruce about the forecast for extreme heat during GA in Utah. Yes, so I have seen that. I will say one of the things that has been very interesting in visiting Utah over the past year is that the weather changes very quickly. Something that we have heard from folks on the ground there is that frequently clouds that are heavy with rain will get stuck between mountains and it will become a very rainy week unexpectedly. However, we have visited in the summer and we have heard of, some of the heat conditions. And while it is hot, it thankfully is not humid. So that does alleviate some of the physical effects related to that heat. I am not a person from the desert areas. So I always kind of laugh when folks say, oh, but it's a dry heat. But that's true. It really is different. But we also, again, have very, very close hotels. So for those who are temperature sensitive, or if the temperature rises well above averages, I think generally in Salt Lake City in June, the temperature is around 80, so not excessive. But if there are extreme heat issues, we are very close to the convention center. So no one should have to be outside for very long at all. And once we are in the convention center, that is all temperature controlled. In fact, it is usually rather cold in the convention center. So that is something where we've had this in past assemblies where it can be very hot outside and very cold inside, and that can cause issues for some folks. I know that's something that for me is a migraine trigger. So I just encourage folks to keep an eye on what that weather will be, to check how far your hotel is and prepare appropriately. I remember attending a triennium several years ago where it was well over 100 and very humid, and everyone had brought little fan necklaces. So there's some things that we can hopefully do to prepare. Oh my goodness. Apparently I have reactions on my computer, so apologies for that. But apparently we're really excited about the possibility of fans that you can wear. So I just encourage people to be prepared and acknowledge that Utah, like many places, is experiencing a lot of climate shifts and unexpected weather, and things can change very rapidly due to the impact of climate change. So just please, folks, be aware and look ahead at what's happening. Think before the committees begin about how you may pack for those days, and then check again before you leave, because you never know, it may be different by the time your committees have done their work and you're ready to travel. Let's see if there are any other questions that are coming forward, and hopefully I won't have fireworks behind me again. Although fireworks are very fitting for our assembly because we will be concluding on the 4th of July. If you are someone who will be traveling that afternoon or evening out of Salt Lake City, I will say that riding in a plane on the 4th of July is one of my favorite flying experiences that I've ever had, because you get to watch all of the fireworks as you're flying and see them all underneath of you. So if you are traveling on that day, you're in for quite a treat. And if you're staying around and you're going to be in Salt Lake City for a longer period of time or in that area, I know that there are fireworks that will be in the area that you can watch, and lots of wonderful things to add to the beauty of Utah that already exists. It is a gorgeous state. Well, it seems like we may have reached a little bit of capacity with our questions. Folks seem to have slowed down. So what I am going to suggest to all of you is to, again, visit that website, visit ga-pcusa.org, and go there and look at all of the information that we've put together. There's a lot of resources there. If you are someone who has registered and you are in MyGA, be sure to go to those training materials and read through them and see the different things that can help prepare you for this assembly. And look at the business, see what topics are coming up. You'll see on our website there are also a number of other events that are happening before the assembly, such as informational sessions and a town hall, that when we get that information for registering for those items up soon, you will be able to sign up and be a part of those conversations as well. So there's a lot happening. Oh, okay, never mind. I said we were almost done with questions, and then it seems like that inspired people. So do go to the website, but I will continue to talk. I don't need to run away. When is it expected that all committee schedules will be up in PCBiz? They're up now. So the deadline for those was yesterday, and you can view those either by going to PCBiz and going to the committees tab and selecting the committee and then selecting schedule. So it's a number of steps. Or if you are registered in MyGA, you can go to the business tab in the left-hand menu, and then it will say that there are business lists, there are member lists, you can see who's in the committee, and then the schedule. And that has an outline of what they are planning for. Their schedules are being written in Mountain Time, so take that into consideration when you look at the times. If it says 9 a.m., it is talking about 9 a.m. Mountain Time, so it's important that folks recognize that. These schedules have a little bit of wiggle room because we know that things may change, or several commissioner resolutions may be submitted and the committee has to reassess how they schedule their time. But generally speaking, they have an outline of their agenda that is on MyGA or PCBiz now, and you can look at that to see what items of business are expected to be discussed at what time. So if you are someone who's a resource person or an overture advocate, or a corresponding member who will be reached out to be clear, you will also be connected with the resource manager for that committee. But if you want to get ahead of that and see the schedule, you are able to do that now. Let's see, there's some others. What are the best ways for pastors to share GA news and experiences with congregants who may not know why they should care? Oh, that's a good question. Thank you, Carol. One of the things that I encourage people to do is to share the worship materials or videos of the worships that happen at the assembly with their community. I think worship is something that we all already know and value, and so that's an easy way to connect immediately to the work of the assembly, because we can see that thing that we're familiar with and see how that plays out in this context. And I'm very excited for the worship that will be happening at this assembly. There's a fantastic team of folks who have been working on that and who are doing wonderful, wonderful things. So that will be a really awesome place. But I also encourage you to think about the process and the fact that while the decisions that are made at the assembly happen at a national body, while they happen in the General Assembly Council meeting, they're really issues that came out of congregations. They're issues that folks wanted to address, or topics they're passionate about, that have emerged from what's happening within the contexts of Presbyterians, who then brought it to more Presbyterians to agree with, and that the conversations that happen at the assembly are the reflection of that reality of what's happening in the congregation at the congregational level. And so that process of recognizing where the business comes from, and then how those decisions actually play out, of how they are followed up on, what sorts of implementation has happened from those decisions, impacts congregations directly as well. So that the process of our polity is really a wonderful thing, and a wonderful way to see how our connectional church really does play within the General Assembly. So process, the worship, there will be a number of resources that we put out from a GA Daily News video series that will happen around noon Mountain Time, the plenary days, which will be interviews and recaps of what's happening at the assembly. There's also news stories and social media posts and all those sorts of things that can help you communicate out what's going on. But as for helping folks to realize how this matters for them, this is our church. This is not, the General Assembly is not the assembly of the office of the General Assembly. It is not the assembly of any other agency. It is the assembly of the church, and that includes every member of every congregation. Let's see. We also have a question about those committee schedules. So again, the deadline for those was yesterday. So there, I do know of one committee that there was an illness in the leadership team, so they may be a slightly later date, but those are coming very, very soon if they are not there yet. And yes, those agendas, there's a question that, do the committee schedules need to be approved by the committee? Yes, just like any other gathering of a committee meeting, when you have your agenda, it does need to be approved by that team. So the committee will vote on that during their first meeting, and may change some things depending on what comes in with commissioners' resolutions. So like any gathering, there has to be some grace and some flexibility in how we implement our plans. It looks like we have slowed down again. So I'm going to go back to when I said we'd wrap up and encourage you all to access that website. And on the website, there is an email. It's ga.helpme@pcusa.org. And that email address is really the easiest way to get answers on anything related to the assembly. We have wonderful staff who look at that and who communicate back out and get that to the right folks to make sure that we can answer anything that pops up. So I encourage you to go to the website, email ga.helpme@pcusa.org if you have questions. If you have questions directly for me, my contact information is on there as well. But we really, really want to say thank you. That's the big thing for today, is that I wanted to be able to connect and answer some questions, but also just to say thank you. Thank you to each of you who will be coming to this assembly, whether that's online or in person, who have committed something to this church and who passionately believe in the ability of this church to make a difference in the world. Thank you to all of you who will be setting aside time as volunteers, as commissioners and advisory delegates, as staff, to go and spend above and beyond your normal schedule in this place to do this important work. And I can't leave without saying a big thank you to all of my colleagues who are on the GA planning team, which spans multiple agencies of the church working together to make this assembly happen. And they are phenomenal people who are very passionate and caring and grace-filled about the work that they do. And every decision and every action that is taken is thought through so diligently and with so much care. So I'm deeply grateful for the folks who are making this assembly happen, and that includes everybody who will be there. I look forward to seeing everyone when we are online or in Salt Lake. Feel free to flag me down if you see me in person in Salt Lake. I'm happy to say hello. When we gather there, we'll see one another in one big ballroom. So there'll be some folks backstage. There will be some commissioners and advisory delegates in a section of rows. There's a section for corresponding members and for mid-council leaders. But we will all be in one room, and we will be able to greet one another and celebrate this fantastic church and the way that it is being reformed and continuing to reform the world around it. So with that, I'm going to say thank you again and let you know that this is not the end. You can continue to contact us, and we will be happy to connect with you as we are moving on the road to this General Assembly. Thank you again.